First of all, it's been a great pleasure to see the movie. I was telling him. I was also asking him, myself being a film buff, couldn't help it. I was asking him what is the documentary filmmaking scene in Meghalaya. He said it's almost non-existent. But if this kind of film is going to be a sample of the non-existent tradition in that state, then I can very well imagine what would be the future if we started making more movies like this. There's a huge potential that means. I'm saying this because Manipur in my within home state, I guess I'm very careful now because I have been here for almost 30 years and I still call it home. It is singularly responsible for the digital revolution, if I can claim it, in the national scene. So much so that now that you even accept feature film in the national panorama and national award competition, film though shot in the digital format, which is because of the Manipuri film movement. Film-wise, it's good, but I think Prof has already pointed out one very important aspect. I'll divide my comment broadly into two groups. One is on the substantive issues raised by this film, and second on the film per se, as a language. The first one is, is a very contemporary kind of, you might call it the rise of identity politics. You can see it and how it gets manifested in the movies. This is very important. And how in that particular rise of the identity politics, factors like gender, factors like economy gets implicated. Couple of things. This film is seemingly telling you a story about Khasi at a substantive level, but it has a universal language. This young chap, you really shot him very well when he said, "Let me have tea." And when you started asking about the pure, who's the pure Khasi, I love his expression, and I hope you could have used even slow motion for a while. The way he smiled and he said, "Let's have tea," kind of thing. It's very good. He was the one, seemingly like most, when the modernity, if I may use the broken, when the modernity have a conversation within tradition, something amazing happened even in the 19th century in this part of the, not only in Khasi. All the nationalists in South Asia try to distinguish between Hindu as a religion and Hindu as a culture. And this young chap tried to do exactly the same thing when he said that there is a distinction between religion and culture. And that tells you a much more deeper problematics about this anthropological category of religion, how it is actually making a particular kind of understanding of religion in the West, and it superimposes and ends up defining all other religions except Christianity and Islam as isms. Buddhism, Hinduism, Hinduism has a kind of an ideology, and why these are still taught as part of South Asian thoughts rather than as a religious study in the Western university. These are interesting issues that comes in that. So there's the first one there. Second is, he also said, I'm taking this because he's a younger generation and which I wanted to pull into kind of because, okay, now they have this condition that they can talk different kinds of things. But then the second part of he said was also very intriguing in this identity politics. The story of migration. The Khasis themselves acknowledge the story of migration as the beginning of it. Like most people will have this story of migration, whether it's Nagas or the Burmese and so on. And it fundamentally raises, similarly again in South Asia, how long one has to be in a place to be called an indigenous or a native. I have in a rhetorical style, I have said it, if you claim that you have evolved yourself from the amoeba, that's a different kind of question. I think most of us don't claim that we have evolved in that particular place from amoeba. So the similar kind of thing. So Muslims were immigrants. This story of, and one of the right-wing tendency in India to denounce this Indo-Aryan migration theory is precisely to claim the son of the soil sort of a position. And this guy also reflects a similar, when he was arguing about Christianity came much earlier, but Islam, Bangladeshis and so on. And there you can see the possibility of contemporary configuration between the right-wing politics and some of these revivalists movement in this part of the world. I suspect that even the hardcore Metis, some of them try to do the same thing, like we are Chitrangadhar's daughter and sons and all that. Arjun's descendant. That's the kind of story they try to do. This is one fundamental. Who is an indigenous person? If the story is of immigration, how long one has to be in a place to be called a native is one problem. Third, gender. And then it's a narrative between the biologically essentialist kind of a position versus a constructed nature of it. In my state, they said, my father belongs to Akoijam, so I carry my son and his Akoijam. My mother is Wanphrang, but if you strictly speaking, 23 chromosomes still is Wanphrang in me. But what is that? The 23 comes to define me as that. Therein lies this whole biological theory as a deeply problematic. It is more of a culturally constructed. And I was telling one of my students, she's also doing on Khasi kind of thing. And I said, whichever background, I can hear the Khasi accent and they speak English. So that is what culturally defines that one of us. The givenness, that's why he wanted to have tea. Yeah. When you started, when you confronted that. So in the identity politics, these three aspects, and the two more, very quickly. The formation of the state and the nature of historiography is also been flagged up. It's again not unique in Khasi story. I mean, how you tell a story, a history, is a very, very selective. 4th of April. Incidentally, again, I can create a narrative whereby Khasi can stand against the Manipuri. You said it was a 4-year-old war, and you realize that Maharaja Gambhir Singh was deployed as an ally of the British. So then you can see, like the Nagas, the first intrusion in 1832 is Gambhir Singh. The first intrusion of British deep inside Khasis is again these Manipuris who were the allies. So you can fight again if you create this kind of a narrative. So history is in that sense a very, very deeply selective way of narrating, and you have rightly pointed out the motive, the nature of that war itself has been reappropriated in a very different sense. That's the one story itself. History in that sense is part of modern identity formation, and that's why some of the scholars are very critical of it. And in rewriting of history, if you understand in supporting historical debate, contestation in history is a contestation of power. Yeah. It's not only about facts and facticity of things, but it is more of a power contestation as these historians would deny. So this is another issue that this particular film reflects of in this. Last one is the transforming nature of the political economy. You want this, you want that, and that lady who was in Italy reminded me of my colleague Tikuro, in one sense, you continuously wear. And I was, I don't know why, whether it was you deliberately introduce as a non-didactic sound, or is it a part of your own shooting? When these Naga girls and others were dressing up this way, now you have choli ke piche kya hai,
so it was a creative decision.
That's right. So you introduce as a non-didactic sound.
So there's some music playing in the background from a radio, but I just enhanced that sound.
Okay, so there's a conscious choice on your life.
Yes, absolutely.
Then I will say, what's beneath the obvious? So it could be a Naga girl, it could be something, that kind of thing. I was sensing that when we were using it. I was thinking, is it a part of the mesoset itself, or you were deliberately using it as a non-didactic sound? It's good. So it's this coal mine, and then limestone, and so on and so forth. It tells you the story, and your barkware that you in is also a human creation. You know that barkware is the artifact of human creativity, if you want to call it. Whereas the different forms and shapes, the aesthetics of plant, is not a human creation. So therefore, you are contrasting at the end of the movie as saying that, where the cloud ends, between the artifact of human construction and the natural being. But therein lies the basic problem of our contemporary world. How far is our human creative endeavors can shape a destiny for us? Because nation state, in spite of some people declaring the end of the Westphalian order, post-national order, and so on, it still remains true. So these are the moments that film captures. Now, quickly on the film per se, I think she has already pointed out. One of the things that I've seen, if you remember Laura Mulvey's famous essay on visual pleasure, 1975, this filmmaker and feminist theorist, he said it's a male gaze. So the camera is a male gaze, and I get a feeling that it's a male gaze. And the absence of the women figure as one of those people who interview with, this is what the subconscious in a psychoanalytical theory or movie will often tell you this part. Subconsciously, You are talking about the barbed wire, to my mind, even the way you frame it at the end, which I suspect is Cherrapunji.
Yes.
Exactly. So I get a feeling that your grandfather crossing it is what reminds you constantly in the film. And I was also very curious about tool shops. There was one young girl who crossed this bridge.
Wow.
And I was shocked from the background, and I said, twice it repeated. Another, there was one lady again crossing.
Correct.
So why is that crossing always a woman? It's the same fear of woman getting married to someone else. I wish that that frame would happen. I was wondering, why not a classic guy or a boy crossing the bridge? They never appeared on the film. I was asking myself. So these could be some of the unconscious slippages which tells you that cinematography still is a male gaze in some way, and your gaze and the crisis in Meghalaya is also a male gaze via your grandfather. I wish that if you have to check back from your great-grandmother what kind of cinematography it would be. But overall, it's a pleasure and it's great, and I'm saying that I wouldn't be surprised if you the non-existent filmmaking in Meghalaya becomes existent. It could be one of the forces to be reckoned with. Thank you very much.